What if I told you that there was a grain out there that actually typically is not labeled as a grain you are probably already consuming? It is extremely nutrient dense for you, but you may also be consuming it in a way that is actually causing you harm. This may come as a shock to you because we're not talking about wheat or barley or quinoa today. We're actually talking about coffee. And in this video, there are gonna be some surprises for y'all. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I teach you all about real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. I teach you how and why to be milling your grains and more. Okay, so you may be really shocked about what I said. So first of all, you are gonna wanna grab a cup of coffee, which is appropriate because we are going to be diving deep into coffee today. I am not only a bread lover, but a coffee lover as well. And I really started thinking about coffee and how can we actually classify it as a grain? Are there health benefits? And should we be treating it like we do our typical wheat, berries, and real whole grains? Is coffee even one of those things that we have just been consuming a fake coffee like we typically are consuming a fake bread? So in case you're new here, like I mentioned, I teach you all about real whole grains and home milling. So what I'm going off of is that I teach you all about how and why to be milling your grains at home, which means that you're taking these wheat berries or wheat seeds and you're actually milling them yourself to make your own flour at home. And coffee is surprisingly very similar. Okay, so in this video, I'm gonna talk to you what my theories are and why I'm actually classifying coffee as a grain. And then we're actually gonna talk about the health benefits of your daily cup of joe, as we like to say, as well as the one thing that you possibly are doing wrong and actually sabotaging your health and not giving it the benefits of coffee. And then we're gonna be ending with some final thoughts that you're definitely gonna wanna stay tuned for. Okay, so first of all, I can already hear like the scientists like typing on their keyboards, coffee's not a grain. And I get it. In our scientific world, coffee is not classified as a grain. Now it is a seed. It is a seed of a cherry type plant, as you can see here. And the reason why I would actually say that it's a grain is because A, we should be treating it as a grain, and there'll be more of that later, but also it is a seed. And in the beginning, when God created us in the garden, he gave us every herb bearing seed, and coffee beans, despite the being a bean, are a seed, just like our wheat berries and our grains are also seeds. So future Felicia here. I completely forgot to mention this also crucial definition that will throw out all of the scientific type categories, and that is just the simple definition of a grain. So as you can see here in Webster's 1828 dictionary, the GOAT of English dictionaries, just definition number 2, defines grains as a single seed or hard seed of a plant, particularly of those kinds whose seeds are used for food of man or beast. This is usually enclosed in a proper shell or covered with a husk and contains the embryo of a new plant, which coffee beans definitely do. So therefore, coffee beans are definitely grains just by the sheer definition of our beautiful English language. You're welcome. No, you're not going to make bread out of coffee, but it still is a seed that God has given us, and it is a powerhouse of nutrients. But again, you may be sabotaging things and may not even know it yet, which we'll get to later. So first of all, let's just do something that you may have already be aware of, and that is the actual health benefits of coffee. And many of these may actually surprise you because I think, especially as Americans, coffee is just what we drink. Just like us Southerners, we also drink sweet tea. You know, iced sweet tea, it's just what we do. We have coffee, you know, it's what we do. And so people don't really think about it as much, but it's something that is very common to our diets. But coffee is actually quite nutrient dense for you. This is still something that God has created and given us as a food that is so beneficial and amazing. So let's get into those today. First of all, coffee is known to increase longevity and reduce mortalities. Studies have shown that coffee can actually help increase longevity, reduce the mortality compared to those who do not drink coffee. And one major study observed, and this was crazy, that drinking up to 4 cups could decrease the risk of premature death by 64%, which is a huge amount and crazy. A second health benefit of coffee is heart and cardiovascular health. So moderate coffee intake does help protect the heart by improving certain functions and reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, and strokes. And it actually suggests that drinking your coffee in the morning may reduce the risk of dying from heart or circulatory diseases by about a third. So there's something with drinking it in the morning that actually can help reduce the risk of stroke and heart attack and things like that. The third one might be very surprising, but maybe not, is brain and neurological protection. So coffee, of course, is known as a stimulant with the caffeine, but that increases alertness and energy and memory, but also regular consumption has been strongly linked to a significantly lower risk of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's disease. So drink up, my friends. Another benefit is improved mental health and mood. Now, I'm sure you might have seen these funny reels or memes that go around and say, you know, I gave up coffee and my life was forever changed. And then it states, and then you get the impression that they're going to go off like how much their life has improved, but it actually states that, you know, they were a horrible human being and miserable and hated everyone. And we think that that's funny, but there actually is some truth to this. So coffee is a natural mood boosting substance by increasing the brain's dopamine production. And habitual coffee drinkers have a notably reduced risk of developing depression and are less likely to commit suicide. Now, my theories in this is because coffee beans actually are high in vitamin B2, and your B vitamins are actually known to have really high health benefits for your brain and your mood and fighting off depression. So it was interesting how they didn't make that link, but the fact that they are high, especially in vitamin B2, I think that actually has a lot to do with it. That and just there's something about a warm cup of coffee, especially on those cold mornings and you just get all smuggly and just makes you happy. Next health benefit is what they call metabolic health and overall diabetes prevention. So it actually helps the metabolism and also preventing diabetes. And the reason for this is because coffee has in them called these plant polyphenols, which is a wonderful, wonderful nutrient to have that is found in many, many plants, but also coffee beans are typically high in magnesium as well. And these two nutrients and minerals actually help prevent things like diabetes because it helps your body to use its insulin more effectively, and it also helps your body metabolize glucose. Another great thing is that it actually is good for your liver. Again, some of these may be shocking because I just didn't know how healthy coffee was, and this is actually a great one. Now, to help your liver, the research has shown that it's better with filtered coffee in particular because filtered coffee, which is basically your typical coffee maker where it's actually going through the paper filter, as you see here, French presses, those like that are not considered filtered. So the filtered coffee is stated to be better for your liver because it can help prevent fatty liver disease, liver cancer, and other liver diseases such as cirrhosis. So if you just kind of see this graphic that I'm showing up on the screen here that actually shows the differences with like the filtered coffee or not that actually help your liver. Okay, so the next one may be shocking because no one really talks about it, and that is actual cancer prevention. Yes, your morning cup of coffee may actually be preventing cancer. Big maybe, because again, you may be doing it wrong and actually sabotaging your health. We'll get to in a bit. So outright, it does not actively like prevent cancer, but I think it can help. Again, this is one of God's foods, and I think God has given us everything that actually helps our bodies. So the reason why this can potentially be a cancer preventative, or definitely not hurt it, it's going to help prevent cancer, is because it helps, it does help prevent against certain cancers because coffee stimulates digestion, which reduces the amount of time that things are in your colon. So remember, the reason why we eliminate that is all the things that the body is not wanting. It helps get rid of toxins and things like that. So the fact that coffee actually helps stimulate the colon is a good thing, because that means you're eliminating toxins that are in your body. And like I mentioned earlier, this contains plant polyphenols, which have been shown to prevent cancer cell growth and also lower inflammation as well. But I think it's, again, one of those kind of jokes. I've seen it on coffee mugs where like, congratulations, you now need to go number 2, for finishing your coffee. People might already know this, like, oh, I had some coffee and I gotta go. But that is actually not necessarily a bad thing, because again, you want to be properly eliminating, just like you should be consuming whole grains, because the fiber helps you as well. Another benefit of coffee is gallbladder and kidney health. So regular coffee drinkers have been shown to have a lower risk of developing gallstones and kidney stones. And that is because coffee may help prevent cholesterol from forming into crystals in the gallbladder. And it also stimulates the bile flow so that cholesterol does not collect, thus forming those type of stones. So again, I've heard people have kidney stones, and y'all, I don't want them. I don't want them. So those are some amazing health benefits to coffee. Let me know if you knew any of these below in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, but we have to now talk about the thing that you may be doing that actually might be sabotaging and completely throwing these benefits out the door. And if you've been following me long enough, you may know what I'm about to say. And just like we should be doing with our wheat and our grains, you need to be grinding your beans yourself and grinding your coffee from scratch, from the whole beans into your ground coffee, fresh every time that you want a cup of coffee. Yes, y'all, that's why I say we need to be treating it like our grains, because if you are not doing this, all of those health benefits I told you about, you're probably not having it. Just like if you were consuming white flour and white bread and you're just consuming dead fake flour, it is the same with our coffee beans, okay? If you are just buying ground coffee from the grocery store, you shouldn't be buying ground coffee from the grocery store, just like you shouldn't be buying your flour from the grocery store either. And let's talk about why. And the biggest reason is that when you grind coffee fresh, it is greatly maximizing the health benefits. Now, uber bonus points if you actually are roasting it yourself. But that's like next level, and I really would love to do that, but I am not even there yet. I do buy my whole coffee beans that are already roasted. So just even better level would be roasting your beans. And by the way, if you do already roast your beans, I would love to hear below, and let me know what you use to roast your beans, because I'm in the market. Okay, so here are the differences of whole bean coffee grinding fresh and buying the ground coffee from the store. First of all, maximum antioxidant intake. Okay, coffee is packed with antioxidants. And let me slow that word down. Antioxidants. So that means antioxidants, whenever they contact with oxygen, they oxidate, meaning they go bye-bye. Okay, so this is why to get the maximum benefit, you've got to grind fresh, because just like, again, with our wheat berries and our grains, as soon as you grind those berries up and you're breaking that open, oxygen is getting through and starting to oxidate all of the good stuff. So antioxidants, we know, help fight against chronic diseases. It helps reduce those inflammation, but it starts deteriorating very fast when exposed to oxygen, which happens as soon as you grind them up. So by grinding the beans right before you actually make your coffee, you are preserving the maximum amount of antioxidants, because there's just very, very little time for that oxygen to get in there, and you're gonna get the maximum dosage, which is definitely what you want. Now, this second reason of why you should be grinding fresh is why you are actually sabotaging yourself by just getting ground coffee. There's many reasons, but this is a big one, and that is because that research has shown that pre-ground coffee contains more free radicals than freshly ground coffee. Now, what are free radicals? So consuming excess free radicals can contribute to oxidative stress and inflammation in the body. And we know, if you've done any research about health, inflammation is bad. We don't want inflammation. We want to reduce inflammation in our bodies. And the fact that pre-ground coffee has an excess of free radicals, Therefore, that daily cup of joe, I would say, is no longer helping you. It's harming you by inserting all of these free radicals in your body, which can then cause inflammation. No bueno. Now, another thing is just kind of on the gross factor, okay, why you should be grinding fresh. And that is just to have a lower risk of mold and bacteria. Yep, I said it. Mold and bacteria in your pre-ground coffee. So coffee beans, here's actually a picture of a coffee bean, and like our wheat berries, they actually possess a protective outer shell that shields them from moisture and air. And once the coffee is ground, its surface area, you have more surface area, and it makes it far more susceptible to the growth of harmful microorganisms, bacteria, and mold. So again, God placed a protective shield over that coffee bean, and once you remove the shield, things can get in. And so that's why you want to keep your whole beans whole until you're ready to grind them up, because it's going to ensure cleaner and safer coffee. And frankly, it's just really gross that we could even have mold and bacteria in our ground coffee, and it'd be totally fine selling it in our grocery stores. Ew. Okay, now this one I totally forgot to actually go online and look at ingredients, because, and this might be something you need to check in the grocery store the next time if you go to buy coffee, and that is that you can avoid preservatives by buying whole bean as opposed to freshly ground, because freshly ground coffee, some of them do add in preservatives, because again, like flour, well, not quite like flour, because flour, they at least remove the bran and the germ, to make white flour, but whole ground coffee, they may need to put those preservatives in, because like you would with freshly milled flour, having those oils and things in there can make it go bad quicker. And so sometimes they actually put preservatives in the ground coffee. So the next time you go to the grocery store, check out your favorite ground coffee, flip it, look at the ingredients list to see if it's not 100% pure coffee, they put in preservatives. And final reason, health benefit, to be grinding your coffee fresh is actually an enhanced energy boost. Yes, you actually get more caffeine, more energy from it, because grinding your coffee fresh exposes a greater surface area of the bean right before the water hits. And you're just gonna have to trust me on this, because it may not make sense, but it's science. It's science. And again, all my sources I will be linking for y'all below. But having that greater surface area and I think that this actually comes down to how fine of a grind it is. I think that's what it's for, which I'm not going to get into like what setting to grind it at. That's a whole different video right there. But I have a feeling this has to do with like how fine of a grind that it is, because what this does is it leads to an improved extraction of caffeine, and it can result in just more caffeine. So you basically get more bang for your buck. And then of course the reason to do it is because it just tastes better. Like anyone who has had freshly ground coffee, just like anyone who's had bread from 100% freshly milled wheat knows, it just tastes better, y'all, okay? It just tastes better. And if you've never had your coffee ground fresh, you're just missing out. Now, good news is this is probably easier to start with than even grinding your wheat and baking bread at home, because it doesn't require you to learn bread baking skills. It doesn't require you to get a grain mill, which typically are pretty expensive. You can get like pretty cheap coffee grinders, and then coffee beans you can actually find in the grocery stores, whole coffee beans. I will get to where I like to buy my coffee beans later on, so stay tuned for that. Now, I will say this, there is a big caveat to all of this, and we're gonna take a huge swipe at your typical like Instagrammy, social media type hype around coffee, and that is that you are going to completely get rid of all of these health effects if you are loading your coffee down with sugar and a whole lot of milk. So I want you to pay attention to this graphic that we have on the screen, because this matters, okay? So I want you to look at the, black filtered consume in the morning. That has 0 grams of sugars and only 2 calories, okay? Look at our typical profiles. You know what you see with your social media influencers, and they're like shaking the iced coffee. And don't get me wrong, I love iced coffee. I just like to make it myself. But this is where like syrup heavy, probably high fructose corn syrup, but sugar example 1, Starbucks cinnamon dolce latte, 40 grams of sugar, The dark chocolate mocha frappuccino, 48 grams of sugar. White hot chocolate, 62 grams of sugar. Whoo, y'all, this is gonna spike your blood sugar. Forget the, you know, how I said how whole bean coffees, like having coffee can actually help prevent type 2 diabetes. This is how you get type 2 diabetes, is by loading it down with sugar. Completely cancels out the antioxidant benefits. It's gonna mess up your circadian rhythm because now you're not just benefiting from the caffeine, but now you're on like a sugar high and your body is going to crash. And so that is a huge caveat that we need to get through, is you don't need to be loading down your coffee with the sugars, the syrups, you know, the heavy milks. Yes, I still like sugar and some milk in my coffee, but I don't load it down. Okay, so now that we did that, let's get into the logistics of all of this. First of all, the best way to store coffee beans. And I actually learned some things from here, and I need to redo how I store coffee beans because I've slightly been doing it maybe not the best way. So in fact, let me pull up a graphic here. So one, eliminate light and air. So you actually want to take it out of the packages that you buy, putting it in a better container. That's going to eliminate, keep out the sunlight and the air. Then you also, of course, which I think is kind of a duh, you want to keep it temperature controlled. So in a cool, dark place would be ideal, like in your cabinet. And then you actually do want to avoid the freezer. You don't ever want to store the beans in the freezer because the fluctuations of temperature can actually cause condensation, which, you know, introduces moisture and can ruin the beans' cellular integrity and can encourage mold, which we do not want. Mold, no good. Now, as far as how long coffee beans store, this one was kind of up in the air because some sources said like 2 weeks for optimal flavor, but then other ones said like up to 3 months. So kind of really depends. And I think a lot of this depends on how well you are storing it. Okay, so more logistics. The type of coffee grinder that I have, I actually use this type of coffee grinder. I really like this because the beans are already in it and I can just select, you know, how many cups I would like grind. I can choose fine grind, coarse grind, and everywhere in between. This one I got from Pleasant Hill Grain. So far, I love it. The only disadvantage to that is that if I want to switch up my coffee beans, I have to like completely unload empty out all the coffee beans, put the new one in. And with it being bigger, you know, that can kind of be a bit of a hassle. I'm usually not like ever doing that, so it's not a big deal. But if you're wanting to switch up your coffee beans, I recommend something more of like a smaller one, or just ones where you don't store the coffee beans in it, you put them in when you're ready to grind. So that way, if you wanted to switch them up, you can totally do that. Now, I'm not gonna go into this, but I'll put this up here of the physics of extraction. So like the burr versus the blade method and like which one's more optimal. So I will let you like screenshot this right here or read it, you know, pause the video, let you read this in case you are very interested. But again, I do think the most important thing is just starting off by grinding your beans, and then for more advanced skill, then you can dive into this of what the most optimal grinder is, and that's a whole other video. Now, big thing for us home millers, do not put your coffee beans in your grain mill. You cannot mill up coffee beans in a typical grain mill. In fact, pretty much any grain mill that you have specifically tell you do not put coffee beans in there. That is because it is a oilier, wetter type seed type grain, and it's gonna destroy your grain mill. Do not do it. Whether you have a stone grind mill or not, do not do it. All right, last but not least, where to buy these wonderful coffee beans. So I do prefer buying from good sources, ones that are paying their farmers a good price. And I hate to break it to you, but probably if you're buying your typical whole bean coffee from the grocery store, which is becoming very annoying and difficult to find, they may not be paying their farmers a good wage and may not be also practicing good farming practices. So one thing you want to look out for is direct trade label. And what this means is it's an ethical way to source your coffee. It allows you to have a fully transparent supply chain and pay farmers directly so a middleman doesn't undercut them and your farmers are just paid better. So that is a label that you want to look for. Of course, I prefer organic, those type of things. But another one that I love, and this is not sponsored in any way, I just really like like supporting them, and that is 7 Weeks Coffee. And the beauty of 7 Weeks Coffee is I can have my beloved coffee while also saving the life of unborn babies. They are a very, very pro-life platform, and for every purchase that you make from them, it helps to go save a life, and which I think is awesome that I can contribute in some way to doing that. And they are also direct trade. They are organic farmers and excellent source of coffee. And then also bonus if you actually have any local roasters. So that all depends on where you live. So that's it, y'all. Hopefully you learned something new and enjoyed a cup of coffee with me. This was a fascinating video to do research for. And yes, we should be treating our coffee beans like we do our wheat berries, and that is grinding them fresh and consuming them whole and intact the way that God intended us, and also not loading it down with sugar. So let me know your thoughts below. And if you're wanting to know about this whole like home milling thing, what is milling wheat berries and all of that stuff, then I would check out this video up here. And as always, I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week.